Welcome to Disruptive Capitalists, the show where purpose-driven entrepreneurs and bold investors share how they're reshaping the world by investing time and money in a way that improves lives and creates wealth. So let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the pod today. Today, we're going to talk about Trump's current policies and how they affect us in the investment world. And my guest today is Anna Njai-Conti with Poder Wealth Advisors. And I know I just butchered that name, Anna. My apologies. Thank you so much for being here.
You're good. You're good. I'm so excited to be here. Super excited.
Yeah, it's always been so fun to speak with you. And let's just talk. If you could just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience first.
Yeah. So my name is Anna Njai-Conti. I run a wealth management firm that focuses on helping women invest according to their values. Most of my clients are people who have either some sort of impact-focused business. So they may, work really closely with founders of color and helping them scale their businesses. They have accelerator programs, those kind of things. And they really are focused on making sure that now that they've found that success and they've dedicated their career to having a really positive impact in whatever matters to them, that their money also really matches that. I am based in Washington, D.C., and I'm really passionate about financially empowering women, period. I think more women need to have money conversations, feel comfortable having money conversations. And that's a little bit about me.
Wonderful. I'm such a fan of yours. You know that. And I love what you've been accomplishing and what you've been working on. You're in D.C., so just central to everything that's happening right now. Doge is living up to their name. They just come in with scissors and they're just cutting everything and seeing what breaks. I think that's kind of their policy right now.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, we're just going to cut everything. And if it breaks, maybe we fix it. I don't know. I'm not really sure what's happening, but.
Sounds about right.
So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
So these policies have first order effects, second order effects, third order effects, most of which we have no idea what's going to occur because of a lot of these things. But investors have gotten concerned. I've had a lot of conversations. I speak with investors quite frequently. There's been concerns about the policies and how they're going to invest right now. How should they invest right now, or should they just keep their money back? So what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think there are a couple, with any big change, there's going to be the meat of the change, and then there's a lot of hype and hysteria, I think, that happens around that. I think that there's a good amount of people that are really panicking. They're hearing things on social media, watching things on YouTube, hearing things anecdotally, and that's causing them to really worry. I think the meat of it, there's a couple of things that I'm particularly watching and mindful of and talking to my clients about. One, I think, is some of the proposed banking deregulation. I think that is really important to mind. The Doge and Trump administration has not been super clear about, for example, what they want to do with the FDIC, but they have signaled that they want to do away with the FDIC, maybe roll that up into the Treasury Department. I don't know what implications that's going to have in terms of the safety of people's money, but it is an understandable concern when we're looking at, an institution that's been around and protecting Americans for nearly 100 years. So I'd say, this is the time where we want to get back to basics and just be really mindful that we have appropriate protections in place. I think this is also an opportunity to think about the values, but we'll get there too. Some of the other things, though, that I think are concerning are when we look at some of the tariffs, like the trade war policies for sure, and the impacts that's going to have on inflation, prices, the impacts that's going to have on the market. And so that is also a big concern. I think, at the end of the day, though, I will say I think that the current administration is always going to be really mindful of the financial impact that this would have on their biggest donors and their biggest supporters. So I don't know if they're really going to, take a wrecking ball to things that are going to hurt the fundamentals of the economy, the U.S. economy. But I do think that we're in for a bumpy ride.
Yeah, bumpy ride for sure. It's been interesting, and I've got connections now, surprisingly, to a number of the officials in the White House, and there's a lot of optimism by the staff. I think by any young politician or new politicians, pretty optimistic. I think if you've been in the system for a while, you realize how challenging it is to get anything done.
Yeah.
I've got about 2 years to do their stuff. So, do you feel like investors are holding back right now? Where are they investing? What are they doing?
Yeah, I do think that people were holding back a lot last year in the run up to the election because there is such a divergence in terms of policy between like the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And so I think folks were really nervous about making substantial moves there. Now I think that people are I think there's a split. I think some folks are very optimistic to your point, and they're very hopeful about the direction that some of Trump's policies, particularly deregulation, is going to have on the private sector and on markets. I think there's another group of people that are really energized for a different reason, which is they're really opposed to a lot of Trump's policies. And so they are really focused on trying to find a good direction for their money and really doubling down on where they're investing, where they're spending, and where they're giving.
So if you could look at a crystal ball, what would you think is going to be the best place to push cash?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that, when we're thinking about return aside, right? Values aside, merits aside, when we're thinking about return, I would say look at the places that Trump has been talking a lot about, right? He talks a lot about energy. He talks a lot about American industry. He talks a lot about utilities. That's not a very sexy place. It's a pretty boring investment space. But I think if they're so focused on deregulating that industry, it's because they want to get a lot more money. They want that industry to go on the uptick. And so that's a potential play there. But I do think that we have to think about where the gaps are as investors and where the gaps are going to continue to be. So when you have an administration that is really focused on deregulation, that is very focused on doing away with like DEI and, special groups, for lack of a better term, like what we would call marginalized groups as a focus area. I think that's an opportunity for us to like really generate solid return. And that's going to be typically in more private investments, but even in a public market investment, I think you have to look at like the things that are going to disrupt or fill a vacuum that is being caused by some of the regulatory changes that are happening.
Yeah, for our part, we're looking to, I don't know if exploit is the right word for that, but to utilize some of that deregulation to improve lives as we strive to, push for the privatization of public housing. Number one, slumlord in America is America. It, has more slum units than anyone else does, and we would like to change that. But interesting. So, what do you think about the sovereign wealth fund?
I think this is a really interesting concept when, sovereign wealth funds are usually established by countries that have surplus and don't have a ton of debt and have a really solid balance sheet, like Singapore, Saudi Arabia. Those are the countries that come to mind, top of mind right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it is really a good idea for the U.S. to have a private sector opportunity to invest domestically. I don't think that that's a bad idea. I just wonder if we're getting distracted by sexy ideas, things that sound great and are not necessarily really moving the needle. or are not appropriate right now. I'm a big proponent on what do we need to think about and worry about right now? Like what is actually going to be, what is the timely move to make? And I don't know that the US is in a position for that. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an economist, but
Oh, well, economists are all wrong. That's one thing that they're consistent about.
true.
I learned that in economics a long time ago. Um, and if you listen to them all, they all have different ideas. It's like lawyers.
For
So,
sure.
what do you think is a timely investment right now, or where should we be focused?
So I think, I mean, there are a lot of different things, but first and foremost, I think everybody needs to take a beat and just sit and think about what are their personal priorities. Because there, before we hit record, we were talking about not all opportunities are the right opportunities for you to focus on right now, right?
Right.
And I think it's the same with investing. We have to think about, yes, this may be a good opportunity, but is it a priority for me? And I think of capital like a garden hose versus a water cannon, right? You can have six garden hoses pumping out an equivalent of water as a fire cannon, and you may be able to, put out a fire, but it's probably going to be a lot slower. But if you have focus and you have that water channeled in one very powerful, lane, I think that gives you a lot more opportunity. So for any investor right now, I would say it's really important to think about like what are your priorities? And regardless of whether you are focused on or you are pro a Trump policy or against a Trump policy, I think you need to look at like what are the things that I want to change? So we call these impact pillars. What are my personal values? And really zero in on something. And then you can look at the policies and say, or the proposed changes, you can look at the marketplace and say, hey, where's that gap once again? So as an example, I think I have lots of clients that are very focused on gender equity. Like they really want women to have equal opportunity. And while, we're not doing DEI anymore and we're not doing affirmative action anymore, there's still opportunities for us to find a way to have a positive influence. So that may be, hey, I'm going to invest in private credit funds, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are going to lend to women-owned businesses that to help capitalize them so that they can grow, right? And that is going to directly counter maybe some, and I don't know, what the Trump administration has proposed in this way, but let's say the SBA is no longer prioritizing lending to women and minorities. Fine. This is going to fill that gap. It's going to allow you to have a solid return and have a lot more impact, but you have to have that focus first and foremost.
That focus, I know it's how we built our company. And we're seeing more and more people do that, just focus on impact and making a profit at the same time, impact in the way that aligns with your values. So whether
Yes.
it's women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses or veteran-owned businesses or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
we can vote, to quote Friedman, we can vote with our feet, right? Like we can, yeah, everybody wants to, tiny houses are the answer, but nobody buys them. So it's like we vote with our feet. We go like, I know, I really want to live in a 3-bedroom house like everybody else does. And we vote with our feet, right? So
Yeah.
we can invest in a way that makes a difference. We can invest, like you're saying, in microcredit funds or there's so many different ways to make a difference in the world, regardless of what politicians are doing breaking everything on the planet, we can
Yeah.
still do things that make a difference and make money at the same time.
100%. And this is one of the things that I am so passionate about is I think folks think about investment as I'm going to maximize return, right? Like I'm just going to chase return and maximize return as much as possible, maybe do some minimization of risk there. On the flip side, then they think about their giving capital. And I always like to tell folks we have to focus in multiple areas. And there are areas in which you're going to have more impact on certain things, like with giving, maybe with spending, right? Or with investing. There are going to be some solutions or some avenues that you may be able to have a disproportionately positive impact. But at the same time, you need to do it. So we want to think about, where are we spending our capital? Where are we investing our capital? Where are we giving our capital? Okay. And you need to be intentional about all three of those. So you use veterans as an example. Great. Are you spending with veteran-owned businesses, right? Or are you spending with businesses that maybe give a portion of their profits to veterans causes? Are you spending with a business that employs veterans? That's one way that you can do that, right? The next is, how are you investing? Maybe you can find investments that are run by veterans, right? There's more investment opportunities out there than you can even name. You can find them. It's really just about looking. You can have that as it. And then you can think, hey, I'm going to allocate a portion of my money to give to veterans charities. That's beautiful. But you have to know where you're aiming and what you're doing in order to know where to look. And I personally feel like most people, maybe I have rose-colored glasses on, but I think most people are genuinely good, and most people want to have a positive impact. They may just have gotten distracted by a lot of the maximize return, me first messaging, and that has not allowed them to see how they can have so much of a positive impact if they shift their focus.
I love that. It's really, really about the focus of our lives. And we've just been taught, I think, by the boomer generation that, dollars are meant to multiply as quickly as possible. And it doesn't matter how they multiply as long as it's not crime, right?
Yeah.
But like, you can make money stealing cars, but that's not the best way to make money, right? You can better to make money investing, but we can do better. And I love what you've been saying, Anna. Like, we can invest in a way that we care about, that aligns with our visions, with who we are. I want to help other people like this, and I want to make money doing it, and we can go out there and find it. We have to focus on it.
100%. And I would say, just to anybody who's listening to this, if you are someone that has advisors around you, let's call it a financial advisor. It may be a philanthropic advisor. Like, don't let them dissuade you from that, because that's a conversation that I have a lot with newer clients, where they may have had this idea for a long time. Let's say they have a family office and they've approached their family office managers about, moving their investments in a more values aligned way. And they were quickly dismissed as, that is going to sacrifice your return. That's going to sacrifice your long-term financial security. And typically that's very outdated thinking. Like, there are tons and tons of studies that show that ESG, social values aligned investing, typically has a much, at least equivalent, if not higher return than like standard investments. But I would say, like, don't let them dissuade you, because they're probably going off of outdated information, and also sometimes, not wanting to show that they are not fully knowledgeable in that area, and they don't want to look silly, so that they will just, dismiss it.
If somebody who has been listening here says, I really resonate with what Anna says as a wealth advisor, and I would love to work with her, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can just search my name. You can also go to my website, which is Poder Wealth. It's PODER wealth.com. And there's just a contact us form. You can fill that out and we'll reach out.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Anna. I'll make sure those links are in the show notes. And as always, it's such a pleasure to speak with you, and just to, I just really enjoy being with the people who see the world through a lens of prosperity and impact. It's so amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Feeling is mutual.
If this episode shifted your thinking, then share it with someone bold. And remember, capital is a tool. Use it to build a world you are proud to live in.